Your Nan could feed a family of 6 on what most of us scrape into the bin every Tuesday. No fridge worth the name, no freezer, no bin bags bursting with half a chicken and 3 soft tomatoes. Just habits. Quiet, clever habits passed down in kitchens that ran on a fraction of what we spend today. Number 19 on this list sounds mad until you try it, and it still beats anything on the Tesco shelf. Number 4 was standard in every home until supermarkets decided it made you look poor. Hit subscribe, because these 25 habits might just cure the modern waste that's costing you a fortune. Let's count down. Number 25. The bread bin was never empty and never wasted. A loaf cost about 9p in the 1950s, and no family threw one away because it had gone hard. The heel, the crust, the stale middle, all of it had a purpose waiting. Your Nan kept a paper bag of drying crusts on the pantry shelf, letting them go properly rock hard rather than binning them soft. Those crusts became breadcrumbs, rubbed between the palms or grated on the box grater, ready for coating fish, topping a pie, or bulking out a stuffing. A whole loaf gave 3 or 4 meals a second life. The softer stale slices, meanwhile, were fried in a little dripping for a savory breakfast, or turned into eggy bread for the children on a Saturday. Nothing about bread was ever considered rubbish. The very idea of scraping a green slice into the bin would have been unthinkable in a house where the baker's bill was watched like the rent. Number 24. The dripping jar sat on the side of the range, and it was pure gold. After the Sunday roast, your Nan poured the hot fat through a bit of muslin into a ceramic pot, catching every drop of that amber liquid before it cooled. It set into a firm, cream-colored fat with a dark, savory jelly at the bottom, the tastiest part, spread thick on bread with a shake of salt. That dripping fried Monday's eggs, roasted Tuesday's potatoes crisp, and greased the tin for Wednesday's Yorkshires. A joint was dear, so wasting the fat it gave off was almost sinful. Modern kitchens pour that same liquid gold straight down the sink and then buy a bottle of oil to replace it. Your Nan would have shaken her head at the sheer daft waste of it. Number 23. Sour milk was never poured away. Before every fridge kept milk fresh for a fortnight, the top of the bottle turned on a warm day, and turned milk was not spoiled milk, it was an ingredient. Your Nan used it the moment it went, whisking it into scones or soda bread, where the acid reacted with the bicarbonate of soda and gave the lightest rise you ever tasted. A pint that turned wasn't a loss. It was tomorrow's tea-time baking. She knew the difference between sour and rotten by smell alone, and the sour went straight into the mixing bowl. We chuck out milk the day the date says to, never once lifting the lid to check. She trusted her nose over a printed number every single time. Number 22. The stockpot lived on the back of the stove and never truly emptied. Every bone from every joint, every chicken carcass stripped bare, every ham hock down to the gristle went into that pot with an onion and a bay leaf. It simmered low for hours, drawing goodness from what most people now bin without a thought. That stock became the base of soup, the liquid for gravy, the secret depth in a stew that shop cubes could never match. Bones were free. Butchers gave them away, sometimes glad to be rid. Your Nan turned that giveaway into the backbone of half her cooking. A single chicken carcass, picked clean and simmered gently for a morning, yielded enough golden broth for a whole pot of Friday soup, thickened with barley and whatever vegetables were going soft in the rack. Today we pay £2 for a carton of stock and throw the actual bones straight in the caddy, having forgotten the stock pot that our grandmothers kept quietly bubbling on the back ring, filling the house with a smell that meant something good was on its way. Number 21. Bacon rinds were saved in a twist of paper. When your Nan trimmed the rind off the streaky before frying, those tough little strips didn't hit the bin. She kept them, sometimes in the freezer once she had one, and dropped them into soups, stews, and pots of pea and ham to melt out their salt and smoke. A handful of rinds turned a plain pot of split peas into something that tasted of proper bacon. They cost nothing because they were the bit everyone else discarded. That's the whole trick of the old kitchen, because the scraps other people threw away were the seasoning that made a poor meal taste rich. A few pennies of bacon flavored a whole pot, and not a shred of it was left unused. Number 20. Vegetable peelings never went straight in the pail. Onion skins, carrot tops, the woody ends of leeks, the outer leaves of a cabbage. Your Nan gathered them through the week for the stockpot or the compost, but the good bits she cooked. Potato peelings, scrubbed and fried in dripping, became a crisp snack for the children before crisps came in a bag. Pea pods were simmered and sieved into a sweet green soup. A single vegetable gave 2 meals, the flesh for dinner, the trimmings for stock. In a house where the greengrocer's shilling had to stretch, throwing away a third of what you'd bought as peel was simply not done. Every scrap earned its keep before it was allowed anywhere near the bin. Number 19. Eggs were preserved in water glass through the summer. Here's the one that sounds mad. When hens laid heavily in the warm months and barely at all in winter, your Nan bought eggs cheap in June and buried them in a bucket of isinglass or water glass, a jelly-like solution that sealed the shell and kept them fresh for months. Come December, when eggs were scarce and dear, she had a bucket of them under the stairs, perfectly good for baking. A dozen bought at summer prices fed the Christmas cake and the winter puddings. It seems like witchcraft now, but it was ordinary housekeeping. We laugh at the idea, then pay triple for eggs in the lean months, having lost the simple chemistry that let our grandmothers beat the seasons at their own game. Number 18. Bruised and windfall fruit became jam and chutney. Not a single soft apple or spotted plum was thrown out. When the garden or the allotment gave a glut, or the greengrocer sold off the bruised at a knockdown price, your Nan turned the whole lot into jars. Bruised fruit, cut past the damage, boiled with sugar into jam that lasted the year. Windfall apples became chutney with vinegar, onions, and spice, transforming fruit too battered to eat raw into something that lifted a bit of cold ham for months. A basket of damaged fruit that a modern shopper would refuse became a shelf of preserves. Plums too soft to eat became jam by the pound. Blackberries picked free from the hedgerow, some already squashed in the basket, went into the pot without a second thought. The bruise wasn't a reason to bin it. It was a reason to boil it. The larder shelves filled with color every autumn from fruit others would have binned, and a spoon of homemade jam on a slice of bread cost, in the end, almost nothing at all. Number 17. Windfall apples were stored wrapped in newspaper. The sound apples from the tree, the ones without a bruise, weren't eaten all at once in a mad October rush. Your Nan wrapped each one in a square of newspaper and laid them in a single layer in a wooden box in the cool of the shed, never touching, so that if one rotted, it couldn't spread to its neighbors. Wrapped that way, apples kept crisp right through to spring. A single tree fed the family for half the year. There was no need to buy apples flown from the far side of the world in February, when the shed still held a box of your own. It was patient, careful work, and it meant the harvest was never gorged and never wasted. First pattern break. Now, here's where the old kitchen gets clever. Number 16. Cheese was wrapped in a damp muslin cloth, not cling film or plastic. Before the fridge, a good bit of cheese had to last, and your Nan knew that letting it breathe under a lightly dampened cloth kept it moist without going slimy or hard. Stored in the cool larder, wrapped in muslin, she rinsed and reused. A lump of cheese stayed good for weeks. The rind, gone hard and dry, wasn't binned either. It went into the soup pot to melt out its last flavor, the way an Italian nonna saves a Parmesan crust. A quarter-pound of cheese was made to last. We seal ours in plastic, watch it sweat and mold in days, then throw a third of it away, having forgotten that cheese wants to breathe, not suffocate. Number 15. Tea leaves were used twice, then used again for cleaning. Loose tea went a long way in a careful house. The pot was topped up for a second brew before the leaves were spent, and even then they weren't finished. Damp, used tea leaves were scattered over the carpet before sweeping to hold down the dust, or used to clean the soot from the grate, or dug straight into the rose beds. A quarter of tea did the work of half. Nothing about that packet was thrown out while it still had a use in it. It's a small thing, a handful of leaves, but it's the exact turn of mind that ran the whole kitchen, a refusal to let anything be finished with while it could still do one more job. Number 14. Butter papers were kept to grease the tins. When your Nan finished a block of butter, the greasy wrapper wasn't screwed up and binned. It was folded and tucked in a drawer, ready to wipe round a cake tin or a roasting dish, using the last smear of butter clinging to the paper. Why waste good butter greasing a tin when the wrapper already had enough on it to do the job? A whole block was used to the last trace. It's such a tiny economy that it sounds almost comical now, but multiply it across every block, every week, every year, and it added up to real money saved. That was the secret. Not one grand gesture, but 100 tiny refusals to waste, repeated until they were second nature. Number 13. Stale cake was reborn as trifle. A dry sponge going hard in the tin wasn't a failure. It was the foundation of Sunday pudding. Your Nan cut the stale cake into fingers, soaked them in a little sherry or fruit juice, layered them with jelly, tinned fruit, custard, and cream, and served up a trifle that tasted like it had been planned all week. The staleness actually helped, letting the sponge drink up the liquid without turning to mush. Cake that a modern kitchen would bin as past its best became the centerpiece of the table. It's the same thinking as bread and butter pudding. The day-old thing wasn't worse. It was the right tool for a different job. Your Nan never saw stale as spoiled. She saw it as the next recipe waiting to happen. Number 12. The Sunday joint. Fed the family until Wednesday. A roast wasn't one meal. It was the start of 3 or 4. Sunday it was hot with the trimmings. Monday the cold slices went into sandwiches or a salad. Tuesday the last of it was minced for a cottage pie or a rissoles, stretched with mashed potato and onion. And the bone, of course, went into the stockpot. A single joint, dear as it was carved and coaxed across half the week so that its cost was spread thin. We roast a chicken, eat the 2 breasts, and bin the rest with the carcass, wasting more than half of what we paid for. Your Nan would have got 4 meals and a pot of soup out of the same bird, and thought nothing of it. Number 11. Bones were roasted for marrow before they hit the pot. Before a bone gave up its flavor to the stock, the big ones with marrow inside were roasted, and the soft, rich center spread on toast, a treat that cost nothing because the butcher practically gave the bones away. Marrow on toast with a scrape of salt was a delicacy that the well-off now pay restaurant prices for, and your Nan served it as a Tuesday snack from a bone that would otherwise be waste. Nose to tail wasn't a trendy phrase in her kitchen. It was simply how you ate when every part of the animal had cost money and every part had to earn it back. She wasted nothing the beast could give, from the marrow in the middle to the last drop of stock at the end. Number 10. Offal was dinner, not waste. Second pattern break. Here's one people find hard to swallow today. Liver, kidney, heart, tongue, and trotters were cheap because everyone else wanted the prime cuts. And your Nan knew they were both nourishing and delicious if you treated them right. Liver and onions on a Thursday, a steak and kidney pudding on a cold Sunday, a heart stuffed and braised slow until tender. These weren't the meals of the desperate. They were clever, iron-rich, flavor-packed suppers made from the parts the modern shopper won't even look at. A whole world of cheap protein sits ignored in the butcher's case today because we've been taught to find it strange. Pig's fry, cheap as anything, made a Saturday supper. A lamb's heart stuffed with sage and breadcrumbs stretched a few pennies into a proper roast dinner. Even the humble tongue, simmered slow and pressed cold under a weight, became sliced meat for a week of sandwiches. Your Nan found it all ordinary, and her housekeeping money went twice as far because she was never squeamish about the parts that others threw to the dog. Number 9. Milk skin and the last of the bottle were never wasted. The skin that formed on boiled milk wasn't fished out and binned. It was stirred back in or spread on bread by children who fought over it. The last drops clinging to the bottle were swilled with a splash of water and tipped into the baking. When cream rose to the top, it was skimmed for the trifle before the milk below was drunk. A single pint was worked for everything it held. There was a mindfulness to it, a refusal to let even the film on top of a saucepan go to waste. It sounds obsessive to modern ears, but it was simply respect for something that had cost money and effort to bring to the door. Number 8. Gluts of vegetables were pickled and salted for winter. When the runner beans came all at once, or the garden threw up more than could be eaten, your Nan didn't let the surplus rot. Beans were layered in salt in a big stone crock, drawing out their water and keeping them edible through the barren months. Onions, cabbage, and cauliflower went into vinegar as piccalilli and pickle. Cucumbers became the sharp relish that cut through a cold meat supper. A summer glut that a modern gardener leaves to the slugs became winter food. It's the oldest trick there is. Preserve in the season of plenty, so you never go without in the season of want. The larder was a store cupboard against the lean months, filled entirely with what would otherwise have gone soft and useless in the plot. Number 7. Fat was rendered and clarified for cooking and candles. Every scrap of fat trimmed from meat, every bit skimmed off a stew, was saved and rendered down slow into clean, usable dripping or lard. Nothing greasy was ever thrown away while it could still fry an egg or grease a tin. In the very hardest times, the roughest rendered tallow was even poured into molds with a wick to make a rushlight when a shop candle was a luxury. That's the depth of the old thrift. Fat too poor to cook with still had one more job to do. We buy fat, cook with a fraction of it, and pour the rest away, then buy more. Your Nan collected it, cleaned it, and stored it. And her fat was near enough free forever because she never let a drop leave the house unused. Number 6. Jars, tins, and paper bags were washed and kept. When a jar of jam was empty, it wasn't recycled. It was washed, dried, and stacked in the cupboard, ready for next year's preserves. Paper bags from the greengrocer were folded flat and reused until they fell apart. String was wound onto a ball. Brown paper was smoothed and kept for wrapping. A drawer in every kitchen held the odds and ends that might come in useful, because buying what you already had thrown away was a fool's game. It's easy to mock the tin of buttons and the ball of string, but it came from a sound instinct. Don't spend on something you can save. That drawer was thrift made physical, a small insurance against ever having to buy what the house could provide for free. Number 5. Leftover vegetables became bubble and squeak. Monday's dinner was built on Sunday's remains. Cold potatoes and leftover cabbage, sometimes a stray carrot or a spoon of peas, were mashed together and fried hard in dripping until the edges caught and crisped. The name came from the hiss and squeak of it in the pan. It cost nothing but the fat, because every scrap in it was already paid for and already cooked. A plate of leftovers that a modern family would scrape into the bin became a meal in its own right, browned and salted and genuinely loved for the crispy bits. It's perhaps the purest example of the whole philosophy: yesterday's waste, fried into today's dinner, and nobody left the table hungry or feeling they'd eaten scraps. Number 4. Third pattern break. This one used every last part of the loaf. Stale bread became bread and butter pudding and a dozen other things. A hardening loaf was never a problem in your Nan's kitchen, it was an opportunity. The ends and crusts, buttered and layered in a dish with currants and a custard of egg and milk, baked into a golden, comforting pudding that cost almost nothing. Or the crumbs bound a meatloaf and kept it moist, the old panade trick that chefs now dress up in French. Or the slices, milk-soaked, stretched a pound of mince to feed 6. One stale loaf did the work of an ingredient you'd otherwise have bought. We've been a third of every loaf we buy, one of the most wasted foods in the country, while our grandmothers had a use for every last dry slice. The bread bin was a resource, never a rubbish heap. Number 3. Sunday's leftovers were potted and sealed for the week. Before the fridge, your Nan preserved cooked meat by potting it. The last scraps off the joint were minced fine, packed tight into a little pot, and sealed under a layer of clarified butter that kept the air out and the meat good for a fortnight. Spread on bread, that potted meat made the working man's sandwich and used up the very last shreds of a joint that would otherwise have dried out and been thrown. It was a skill, a bit of proper preserving done at the kitchen table, and it meant nothing from the roast was ever binned. The supermarket packet of sliced ham killed it stone dead, uniform and convenient. And with it went the household art of turning the very last of the meat into a week of lunches. Number 2. The first in, first out larder meant nothing was forgotten and spoiled. Your Nan's larder was ordered with an unspoken rule: the oldest at the front, the newest at the back, so that nothing lurked in a dark corner going off unnoticed. She knew exactly what was in there, what needed using today, what would keep. There was no half-forgotten jar growing fur behind the newer shopping, because the whole system was built to catch food before it turned. Meals were planned around what needed eating, not around a sudden craving followed by a bin-side discovery of something long gone. It sounds like simple organization, and it was, but it's the single habit modern kitchens have lost most completely. We shop, we forget, we find, we bin. Your Nan looked in her larder and cooked what was ready, and waste never got the chance to happen. And number 1, the whole household lived by the belief that waste was shameful. This was the habit beneath all the others. It wasn't a trick or a recipe. It was a way of seeing the world, forged through rationing and hardship, where throwing away good food was close to a moral failing. Every dripping jar, every saved crust, every bucket of preserved eggs came from this one deep conviction: that food was precious, hard-won, and never ever to be squandered. Children were raised to clear their plates and to see waste as an insult to the effort behind the meal. It's the thing we've lost most of all, not the skills, which can be relearned, but the feeling in the gut that binning good food is simply wrong. Your Nan carried that feeling all her life, and it's why her kitchen ran on a quarter of what ours costs today. So here's my challenge. Pick one. Keep the dripping this Sunday. Wrap your apples in newspaper. Start a stockpot from the bones you'd have binned. Try it for a week, and tell me in the comments whether your Nan was just being old-fashioned, or whether she knew something we've been taught to forget. She knew. Now you do too.